So are we making a choice that we have to go with this topic?
Yes.
Just because it was generated?
That's right.
Oh, wow. What if I know nothing about this topic? Then you're going to carry it since it's your idea.
You want to tell them what we're going to do?
Sure. So here's the deal. We have, in this chat ATP world, Justin has found a AI opportunity to be able to randomly choose topics. And so he is busily clicking away, trying to get it to work. And whatever the topic is, that's what we're going to go with. But he's just like a gopher. He's just got his eyes right there, and he is focused.
There we go.
Okay,
right.
Now he's back.
So
the intensity has gone out of his vision.
You didn't tell him I was sitting here programming.
Well, I didn't know that's what you. Yeah. That's the clicking part. I said you were busily clicking away. So I can't even see the font on your screen. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, we can zoom in here.
No, it's all good.
Can you read that?
Yeah, I can. Get a topic.
Exclamation point.
Exclamation
point.
All
right. So just to clarify his APT point, I took all of our episode titles that we've done so far.
Okay.
And I put them in ChatGPT, and I said, generate more topics for a podcast episode that has episodes titled, and then I put a list of all of our titles.
Okay.
And then it generated.
Did you put anything in there about polarizing?
I might have. I can't remember the exact prompt, but the key part for me was that I gave it all the episode titles we've done so far.
Okay.
And so then it spit out some topics.
I bet. Welcome to How I See It with me, Mark Pratt, and
Justin Sternberg. This is a podcast that works to counter cultural polarization through thoughtful conversations. Like it, yeah. And there were some repeats, so I removed them, like ones we've already done or repeats of itself. So I removed them.
Why would it give us ones that are repeated?
I don't. It's not
that random.
It's not actually intelligence. It's a natural language model that creates predicted text based on what you provide. So that's what people. That's a ChatGPT. It's not like this sentient being. It's basically generating text that looks like text that would be a response to what you ask.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Which is a form of intelligence. Yeah, exactly. Sure. But it doesn't always know that text it generated isn't correct or didn't really answer your question. It's just generating text that feels, like which matches answers.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's it's interesting. It's not as smart as you think, but it's smarter than. It's very smart.
I never thought it was that smart. I'll be honest with you.
Well, how often have you used ChatGPT?
I haven't that often. But I figure if it's just all the information that's out there, and it's just putting it together in such a way that says, okay, this connects with what I was given. And it does it real fast. I can respect the speed.
Yes. It does it real fast. And it can provide, here's the thing, it can provide a wrong answer. But it can also provide a better answer.
Sure.
Right? So a
way that we didn't think about it before.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a response that's generated from inputs that are more accurate than one of the example is you can people have done this and kind of shown an example of asking it counselor type questions, psychiatrist type questions, what do you do when you want to hurt yourself, for example. Sure. And the answer it returns is really good and actually almost has a kindness to it.
Oh wow.
And it's because it's generated from all the answers to that across the internet.
Sure.
I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. I think you would find it interesting if you used it.
What you just shared with me was interesting. So yeah.
So here's what we're gonna do.
That being said, though, I still So what it's taken from is all across, because I know we've talked about, technology before, and everybody has their silo.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it goes outside of my silo
Yeah.
for that information in many cases. So that would be, I could see that being a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it gets other input, other thoughts
Yep.
that I might not necessarily have in my own individual social media silo type thing, where I'm only getting certain input.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that being a positive thing.
Yep. And yeah, absolutely. And resources that maybe you've never had, right? So
Sure.
it's like the cool thing, there's one called Google Bard, which is like
Lawyers?
ChatGPT, but it's Google's.
Oh,
No, lawyers.
yeah, the bar exam.
Bar.
Yeah.
No, Bard.
Yeah.
As in
BARD.
smart guy, I think, right?
Oh, see.
Bard is like
Yeah.
a wise person. I
Yep,
think.
I give you that.
Define Bard. A professional poet and singer. Oh yeah, as among the ancient Celts whose occupation was to
Oh, nice job.
Yeah.
So bard is a
poet or
wide
singer.
person
Yeah.
who typically writes music.
Artistic person, I guess. I thought it was more of a wise, but yeah, I was wrong.
Hmm.
It's like a performer type thing.
So yes, Google Bard.
Google Bard.
It has nothing to do with law.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe it does, but
Could
it will typically spit out some links to resources where it generated content from. So that's one of the benefits of Google Bard over something like ChatGPT. It's like ChatGPT will give you an answer. You have no idea if it's right, and you don't know what sources are. Where Google Bard will often include some sources that kind of where it referenced it, so you can at least check if it's right based on that
if it fits,
source.
If it's applicable.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
Just like we had a misunderstanding about Bard.
That's right.
It depends on your
That's
definition.
Right. That's right. It does. Yeah, the definition of something can change everything.
The spelling probably makes a big difference there. But either way.
So the idea is that we're going to pick a random topic. We don't know what it is. It's ChatGPT generated. So we've already read and seen the list.
I'm sitting up in my chair.
I think Mark forgot that, but we have reviewed all of these topics at one point.
We have?
Yeah.
Even the one we're going to get right now?
Yeah, I showed you the list of all the ones that generated. And yeah.
Oh, was that what we saw earlier? I thought you were
Today, no. It was a different day.
Oh, well, then see, I'm not responsible for anything that happened today, a different day.
So anyway, the point is they're pre-reviewed topics. I don't know that we were necessarily excited about all of them.
Do we need a drum roll for this morning?
Yeah, do I have a drum? I think
yeah,
I have
you
a
do
drum
have
roll.
a drum roll, but we don't need one. So
I have to remember which button it is.
It's all
and
good.
we know what happens when I push the wrong button.
So that being said, do you have a topic ready at this moment?
I have to click get a topic.
Oh, so that's all you have to do.
That's all I have to do.
You're going to click that.
I'm going to click the magic button.
And so here's a drum roll. Ding. Oh, he had to click twice.
It didn't work.
Nothing has happened so far. So yes, this is what happens in real-time podcasting.
This is what happens in real-time programming.
Oh, programming.
All
Sorry.
right, let's try this again.
Okay, so
I need another drum roll.
Well, he went back to another page, did another click, and now he's back at get a topic.
All right.
Ding.
Nice.
Ooh, and the screen reads.
Ooh.
I
think you're gonna like this one more.
Well, this is better than I thought it would be. Should athletes be allowed to kneel during the national anthem? So that's
indeed.
When I read that, what word came to your mind? Should athletes be allowed to kneel during the national anthem? As in
yes or no? Or
no, what came to your mind?
Oh, racism.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because freedom came to my mind.
Okay. So there is your two polarizing concepts, right? I would argue.
Oh, Justin's already starting to argue. I like it.
No, I'm saying I think that's what makes it polarizing. Those two words we just managed to magically
Sure.
pull them out of
No,
why
I hear you.
it's so polarizing. What do you
Because
think?
we haven't done,
Yeah.
freedom was one of, now that you
Mhm.
mention it, freedom was on our list of topics.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah,
And so is
racism.
but we chose not to do that one until we can have a voice, kind of like
To speak to it.
Yeah. Which I'm excited about doing that at some point. But two white dudes, there's
Yeah.
only one race represented here, so.
Yep.
But interestingly enough, I'd say this topic ties into both of those things.
Sure.
And I would say is kind of the polarizing war cry on maybe both sides.
Sure.
Right? What do you think?
So, yeah, I agree with you. So in that question, would you have a yes or no answer?
Should athletes be allowed to kneel during the national anthem? I believe they should be allowed.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether I agree that they should do it, like it's a good thing or not, or whatever.
Whether you agree with it or not.
Whether I agree with it or not, yes.
Sure.
Because of freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
And I'm with you there.
Okay.
It's not something that I'm going to condone
Right.
or I'm going to necessarily. And
Let's get real serious with it.
Okay.
Not real serious. Real practical. If you coached a local team, soccer, for instance, I think
Sure.
you coached John a little bit.
Yep.
High school team, whatever.
Yep.
Would you allow that for your athletes?
And I think for me,
Yeah.
I would have to allow that
Okay.
in that sense because and here again,
Because we can say one thing, but if you put it in a real world situation.
yeah, and I like the real world situation, and I think a conversation has to occur, and in that analogy you gave or my history, I'm thinking of a young teen, and I think there's an aspect where that young teen still needs to be able to have that right. And, there would definitely be a discussion that went along with it, because I think there is the dynamic of team and being a unified.
Yeah.
And is that something that we understand and it adds to our ability to accept one another and still work together as a team? Or is it something that tends to just create isolation and granted, not that everybody always has to go along with whatever the team or the coach decides. I'm not going there, but yet I think in some cases it has led to divisiveness that isn't beneficial to the entire team.
Yeah.
And here again, that's just my perspective on it. Cause yeah. And granted, I'm kind of thinking of that era, where it started and, the NFL, did it start? Was it?
Yeah.
It was
Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like you say, and here again was, based on who he was, his, inputs, that kind of thing. It's just, okay, and I would recognize that from a athletic standpoint, other athletes would have more credibility for me personally, than Colin Kaepernick, even though, nothing against his ability but yeah, just thinking about that as far as I think there's something to be said for I'm doing this for a reason or I'm doing this for publicity. Mm-hmm. And I think that can play into it, but I'm not trying to derail the topic either. For you.
Well, it's not derailing the topic. That's very much, very much on topic for the topic that was randomly generated for us.
Sure.
I do think that's interesting with Kaepernick because I do think people will, I don't know if this is necessarily what you're saying, or I guess I would have to ask you what your implications are, but a lot of accusation that it was done for publicity. But if you look at the actual output of it, I would say he's not playing. He didn't play. It was a negative impact to his career pretty significantly. Right. Yeah. And so, I take a little bit issue of when people say, oh, he only did it for publicity. it could be true. I'm not going to say the initial effort wasn't some, but I also think we're humans and we're multifaceted, and I would imagine that even if that was part of it, part of his motive in the beginning was thinking, and I'll get publicized or whatever, I'll be whatever, that his motives were genuine in the sense of, I want to draw attention to these matters of, Black Lives Matter, that kind of thing. And I believe, so I think, but, as far as outcome of that, he did gain publicity.
No doubt. No doubt.
He certainly didn't. I don't know that he's making more money than he would have had he not done that. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you there.
What do you think?
Well, I think, influence is a
currency.
Is a currency. And, and I guess I'm just thinking about it in that context of, people that I'm not a big fan of Drew Brees. I'm not Drew Brees. Who's the guy that just retired? Him. Brady, Tom Brady.
Peyton Manning was coming to my mouth, and I was like, I know that's not what you mean, Tom.
But no, that's to where that person, Tom Brady has a different level of respect from my perspective, to where and here again, now that I'm saying that, I have to look at it. Okay, is that a black white thing? Because I can't argue, the fact that, Tom Brady's a white guy. Do I respect him more? But I think about what I initially came to mind is someone who I respect from a level of athleticism and what he has accomplished and performance. And it's like, okay, so and I would have to admit that if someone like him, were to kneel, I would tend to say, okay, that's somebody that feels very strongly about what they're doing, and I can respect that more so than if it's somebody that I see, is typically on the edge of that publicity, athleticism type dynamic. Even Cam Newton, it seemed almost like you could predict his demise to a certain degree, and granted, I'm not saying he might have had some mental health issues going on, but it almost seemed like you could see who he was changing, just on who he was and the stances he took. And it's like, it seemed as if his athletic career kind of went downhill from there. Yeah. So,
and I guess the question is chicken or egg, right? Like, did the athletic career dip because of the focus shift, or did the focus shift because the athletic career was dipping and it was a way to become relevant?
Or did my athletic career give me more influence? Yeah. And then that influence tended to create, shift my views, and I might have went too far down that rabbit trail. And go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Or any other variations. I mean, because I think there's, I also think, as I said, humans are multifaceted, but we like our heroes to be one facet that we can understand and wrap ourselves around. Or if they're going to be multifaceted, at least make sure all the other facets align with the things I care about. You know what I mean? It's like, I think
you mean like our heroes.
We like superheroes, right? Like Superman, he's who he is, and Flash runs fast, and but like, we don't want to know about their political opinions or whatever. It's like, you know what I'm saying? We like to know them for the one thing we know them for. And I think when there's,
you don't want to know their political opinions, or you want their political opinions to align with yours?
I think either one. Right. I guess that's kind of my point. It's like, let the main thing be the main thing, because that's what I care about with you. Right.
Sure.
I'm not saying this is good. I just feel like that's kind of a tendency for humanity, is like, I want my heroes to be simple. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. They're the one thing I know them for is that that's what they're about, and that's what I can get behind or not get behind. If you hate Tom Brady or you like him, it's like, well, he's someone who wins no matter what, right? Sure. So that's his thing. We all know. Like, it's either he's a villain to you or he's a hero, but either way, it's like, that's the thing. That's what we get out of Tom. There's nothing more.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like we tend to want to do that with all of our heroes, and most of our heroes make it easy because that's where the money is, right? It's capitalizing on the thing.
Sure.
That's the money maker, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that thing is, and don't distract from that, because it will distract from, the outcome, the income, I should say, the money, right? So I don't know. Maybe that's a simplistic idea, but I do feel like that's seems to be true, where we like our heroes to be simple and
no. I
easy
hear
to
where you're coming
package,
from that.
And so when they shift from that, it gets confusing for us.
When they become complex.
Yeah. It's like, well, do I want him to be my hero?
Is that person still my hero?
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's like, well, now I have to villainize him because he has an opinion I don't like, even though I loved the thing I loved about him. Yeah. Now I can't love that either. And I feel like I've seen that through this conversation where it's like, well, even that wasn't that great. It was like, people who used to be fans, they now can villainize him, and it's like, no, he was good at some things, as far as sports go. Obviously he had some strengths and some weaknesses. He wasn't the best athlete in the world, and I think that's what we're kind of talking about. So it kind of makes it harder to respect him, sadly, because that's not all he is. Is his ability to be an athlete and his performance. Kind of to your point, like your tendency would be to respect a Tom Brady level of effort. For them to switch into this political stance, you'd hear it a little bit better. And it makes perfect sense why that's true. You're basically capitalizing on the social capital you've built up, right? Like you're cashing in on that, and we're saying you're borrowing too much. For a lot of people, for Colin Kaepernick, it's like you're borrowing against, credit you don't have. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does.
That's a lot of stuff.
But I still want to come back to, when I think about it in that context of kneeling for the national anthem. Okay. Our tendency, or, the team dynamic, if you would be to tend to, stand for the national anthem. Mm-hmm. When you think about standing, kneeling, but when you think about the national anthem, what is that to you?
Well, that's a good question, and it really comes to the heart of the matter. But for me, it's a very patriotic and appreciative vibe for me, and kind of pride. Go back to our conversation about pride, national pride, and I would even say to a certain degree an indoctrinated affection and respect.
Oh,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I was thinking. I was processing indoctrinated. Yeah,
like
no,
from the time you were young.
Yeah,
this is
taught. What you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're not saying indoctrination is necessarily a bad thing at that point, because you're taught a level of patriotism, if you would.
Correct.
And that doesn't have to be, that's not necessarily a bad thing, even though in our culture at times that aspect, or, patriotism may not necessarily be valued, because it has a tendency to, take indoctrination from a negative standpoint.
The level of patriotism can be problematic. Like the degree to which you are patriotic can become problematic, but also one would argue that this is based on the word patriot, which is based on the idea of the original patriots who went to the nth degree to make this country happen, right? So it's like the level of their patriotism was death, right? Like we'll do,
Yeah.
So it's like, it can be a hard thing to kind of wrestle with in my brain, of like how much patriotism is too much, in the sense of, alienating others, or, us versus them kind of idea, or the ability to fight for an idea that matters to the degree that I'd be willing to die, and it's like, I respect the fact that our forefathers, the original patriots, did that. Yeah. And I wouldn't take that away from them. But at the same time, if someone was that extreme today, would I appreciate that? I don't know. I don't.
Exactly.
I feel like that would be very uncomfortable
Sure.
for me.
A patriot today would be unsavory to a certain degree.
Although if we were being oppressed, I think that's part of it, right? Like the environment that they were in was like very clear oppression and to a degree, right? And
sure.
kind of there was a very clear evil that to point to say we have to fight that evil. And I think if that's the case today, still it would be much easier. I don't know, Mark. I don't know. I feel like it's complicated.
Yeah, it is. It is complicated. And I give that, and yeah, I mean, yeah, because we can have all of our conspiracy theory type ends out there that, rail against, Big Brother and other things like that. And yet there is a part of me that would say, would we? I mean, I think about it even at times, granted, we're paying our own government taxes, but, I routinely hear, the patriots, or our forefathers would be rolling over in their graves based on the amount of tax that we pay,
Yeah.
And granted, we're not paying it to a foreign dictator, and so that becomes a difference.
Yeah,
and
their rallying cry was taxation without representation.
Exactly.
And
so that's what's...
One could certainly argue that that's similar to what we're... Are we represented? I don't know.
Yeah. And yet I'm still... I appreciate that insight or that perspective, and I'm still bringing it back to that because I think it is, for me, what those two... The athlete part matters very little to me in this part because of that. Yes, athletes may, have a unnecessary amount of publicity, or, not unnecessary, but you understand where I'm coming from. And I think, I would dare say, athletes, actors, they're kind of both in that. What did I say? It was the other day. I was watching something or seeing something. Oh, I went to the movies. That's what it was. And there's a person that's I like how we've adopted this influencer title for somebody's job name. It's like
right.
actor / influencer. That's right. It's like,
that's my job.
That's my job. That's what I do. It's like, well, isn't everybody an influencer to a certain degree?
Can I explain the concept of an influencer?
Of course, but then we're going to come back to this.
Right,
of course.
Right. All right, quick aside. So an influencer usually comes from the social media side,
sure.
And the whole point is people will pay me to communicate their message because I can influence.
Sure. So basically, if you have a YouTube,
right, or
if you're
Instagram
on YouTube or
whatever,
Instagram,
it's like if I show your product and promote it. I am an influencer and therefore you should pay me lots of money. So
sure.
It literally is like they've turned it into a career. My number of Instagram followers makes me an influencer, which means you should pay me to show your product.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of the genesis.
It's a combination of a marketing type perspective. Yeah.
But it is very funny, and I agree with you.
It's like, huh.
I'm an actor / influencer. I'm a podcaster / influencer. So.
I like it. I like it. Put that after your names. You're just gonna have to print business
Justin
cards.
Sternberg, podcaster / influencer.
Yes, I like it a lot. Yeah. But I'm coming back to that.
We have to start calling ourselves that so that we'll start getting paid to do this thing.
Yeah. But so we could put should influencers, should actors, be allowed to kneel, and for me, that does come back to freedom. And I'll be honest, it's been made, I think it's been become more relevant. I think for me, since John has gone in the military. And
for sure.
And this is a conversation in some ways that we've had, because, he's basically said to me, no, I don't necessarily agree with it, but, I believe that everybody should have the freedom to be able to do so.
Yeah.
And then it's like, at that point, it didn't matter so much what my personal perspectives were.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, granted, But at that point, it's like, yeah, it is about the freedom to be able to choose. And I think it is about the ability to, as you kind of alluded to, cash my influence in such a way that says, okay, are you going to join me in this? And I'm going to you're going to allow yourself to be influenced by me to see that a problem exists. Mm-hmm. Based on how I see it, how that individual, whether it's an athlete. And I think, part of where you were coming from and prior to that is I think individuals can be so out of touch that at the same time, they don't have the credibility that they would think. When we think of that terminology, influencer, you and I almost tend to laugh just a little bit. Granted, it's a title, it's a real thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, I'm going to go do exactly what that person is telling me to do because of their influence in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this kneeling for the national anthem comes into play. It's like, okay, it's going to bring some attention. I won't use the word publicity, but it's going to bring some attention. And is it going to create what I desire to create, or is it not? And I think individuals, need to have that freedom to be able to kneel, because I think it is an opportunity, kind of like a press. We need to be able to say that this person is doing that and not fear that there will be some rebuttal, some retaliation against us just because we're bringing this to the light.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's at the basis of this question.
Yeah.
From that fundamental right to be able to have the freedom to do something different than what I have been respectfully indoctrinated into from a patriotic standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like it or not, like Kaepernick or not, believe he deserved, he had the social capital or not, it started an intense national conversation that's lasted till, today, where ChatGPT is giving it as a topic, right? Like, I would argue that he probably did what he set out to do in a sense. Although, I haven't spoken to him and I can't remember even hearing him talk about it. So I can't say that, but I guess that's just an assumption I'm making, that it created the conversation that he was trying to create.
Sure.
And, again, we're multifaceted. So I'm sure to some degree he wants the credit for that conversation, but I also think to some degree he probably is happy that it's gone on past him. Does that make sense?
Sure.
If he was doing it for the reasons that he was saying he was doing it, then I think he would be happy to say it started with me, but it didn't end with me, and it grew past me, and that's great, because that was not the purpose, was it, for it to be about me?
Sure.
I would think that's kind of his stance on it. But again, we have to get him in here and ask him. But
yeah, you have his contact. I figure you're the influencer in the room. So
I got his Instagram. I'm sure I could look up his Instagram profile and slide him a DM.
Yeah, yeah. That's how you got Doomer.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Elias Doomer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
it was dumber though.
Dumber. Yeah. It was dumber.
But
I was like, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, anyway.
I just remember that's how we were saying it first, because we didn't want to offend him.
Is it Doomer? Yeah, he's like, nope, it's definitely dumber.
It's just the way it is, just like it sounds. Yep.
Yeah, I definitely think they should be allowed. I think I back to the rubber meets the road question about if it was my team.
Yeah.
I think there are some days in this conversation where I would have been like, if you're on my team, you'll stand. Because that's the respect you have for me as your coach who says this.
Yep.
The respect you should have for a general, reverence. Reverence, sure. I guess would be the right thing. And then there are other days where I would have done the opposite. Like, if you believe this is right, I'm gonna respect that with you. as long as you're doing, I would encourage them. I want you to be doing it for the right reasons.
Yep.
I want you to think about this. I also want you to recognize that there are consequences to this. Maybe today, maybe not, you know, but maybe eventually you're trying to get a job and they see a picture of you kneeling in high school and they think, I don't want this kind of kid in my, you know what I mean?
Wow.
So I think it would be important for them to understand there are consequences. And if you're willing to do it for those, with those things in mind, then I can respect that and I can understand, you know, and
Sure.
like, I don't agree. I don't think I wouldn't do that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are days where I would have probably fell on both sides of that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm a middle-aged white dude, so of course that would probably shift depending on my growing up circumstance and the color of my skin and all those things.
Yeah.
You know, and I've read, you know, it was a national conversation for a while, so I read a lot about it on both sides, and that I think that's really where my you know, my mind was changed, right, to the degree where I could say I understand it a lot better and I don't hate it anymore, where originally it was just appalling, you know what I mean, because of the lack of reverence. And when I started to understand some of the facets of it, I gained a respect for it. If that makes sense.
And it's interesting you're thinking about it, the movie Miracle, where the hockey, where we play
Kurt Russell.
Yep.
It's a coach.
That famous line he says, you know, where they're going back and forth, you know, the name on the front of your jersey is a whole lot more important than the name on the back. You know, and I was thinking about that. I think there is, because I was thinking from what you were saying, you know, I think there is something to be said. And I think the military is another good example of that. You know, we don't always get the choice when we put a uniform on.
Yeah.
You follow me? And I think there can be something to be said for, you know, that even the ability to follow when I disagree, because I am wearing a uniform. And granted, a jersey, from my perspective, is a part of that. So I would say a coach has that ability to be able to say, like you were asking me, and yet, you know, from my seat, you know, that person has that freedom. But I'm also thinking about it in that context of, you know, sometimes when you put a uniform, when you put a jersey on, you have to set your fundamental rights aside to be able to choose something differently, because I'm going to recognize that I may not have the full picture. And, you know, hopefully from, you know, a military standpoint, those above me do, and they're making choices based on the best interest of our country, that kind of thing. So that was, you kind of brought that up to where, that is something to be said for the sake of a team and unity and but go ahead.
Excellent point, and I agree with that. And I think that needs to be at the forefront of your decision making. Is do you understand that you are representative of this uniform?
Sure.
And all the things that implies, and are you still willing to do this? Does that make sense? And because I think that's part of the conversation, is to say it's worth it, right? I think that is part of the conversation of why it was done, is it's worth it for the benefits that they were trying to achieve, each individual, right? And they probably all have similar or maybe different reasons, but is it worth that to gain that? And I think that's where the discussion lies, is like, just because they have it's so hard. Just because they have the uniform doesn't mean they shouldn't protest.
Sure.
And yet, that's kind of what I was saying about it. If it was my team, I want them to understand the value of that uniform. Yeah. And what this unity can do for that uniform, you know, what that uniform represents. I don't know. It's like, it's such a hard thing for me, because again, I've just moved from the polarized ends of it, to where it's just like, it's a tough one for me.
So I'm going to bring this back to you personally, of course. When you're at that point of almost saying, I'm not sure whether my team, is that more about the fact of you being the coach of that team, and it seems as if your authority is being called into question as the ability to lead that team in a unified manner?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be a big part of it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to remove that from my decision. Like, I would want to say
Sure.
that does, but to be honest, I'm sure that would be a factor in deciding. And if I allowed them to, it would be to fight. It would be fighting that concept because the approval thing. I would want everyone to think I'm a good coach who has it under control.
Okay.
I think I would also go, some people are going to approve of me more because I allowed this. So,
yeah.
But I think that would definitely be part of it. Is like, yeah.
And I think that's
so.
it is interesting when we think about it from a personal or personality standpoint. Yeah. What does it mean to be a team?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't necessarily see myself as a good team person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I'm anti-team.
Yeah.
I enjoy when we play Frisbee. I enjoy being part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
But yet at the same time, I'd be the first to it. Well, yeah, there's times when I'll break away because I may not necessarily, be feeling unified in that. And it's like, I'm still going to do my own thing.
Yeah.
So I think, I think that plays into this question.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, every person has a different value on the concept of team. Your value of is less, maybe a little bit less than other teammates, right? Based on what you're saying. Like, maybe your respect for the concept of team is like, it matters, but not
it definitely
that
matters.
Much. Right.
It
like,
definitely matters, but
on a continuum, it's like maybe you don't care about the concept as much as some other team members who think you should only care about the team, that way. Because that's certainly been part of this conversation too. It's only about the team, and you're letting your team down.
Sure. You just let the whole team down.
That's right. And for some of them, they'd say, if that's what it takes to get this conversation going, it's totally worth it. But for the people who team is of a higher importance, it's not worth it, right? So I think that, people are multifaceted, and none of us are the same.
I appreciate you bringing that into it, because I think that is a part of what made this such a polarizing topic so early on. And it is interesting to, when we unpack it and its different components, of that one sentence, it does make a difference. And I think about it even, when you think about national anthem, our country song, if you will, our country rallying cry, that is a.
And one thing I found out through this conversation is that one of the verses we don't sing is very racist. It has a part of it that talks about slaves, I think, or something.
Gotcha.
And so I was like, that's kind of gross.
Do with that? Yeah.
And even the Constitution, was it that had the 3/5? Like a slave was a 3/5 of a person or something. Do you remember that? It's like some of those things we hold dear, they were created with slavery as just part of reality.
Sure.
Again,
in
it wasn't
context.
In a context of that's just our reality. It wasn't premeditated. Like we want this embedded for the rest of time. It's like, no, this is our reality. A slave is a 3/5 of a person. They're almost a person, but not quite. Yeah. It's like how we thought of them, which is gross, right?
Sure.
And then again, the national anthem having verbiage in it that is that disrespectful of a whole section of human race is that makes the whole thing very fuzzy for me and like, oh, gross. Because I love that was your first question, is what is the national anthem making? Yeah, it has these beautiful connotations for me. But then when I find out there's this hidden third verse, it's kind of like, not unlike a lot of organizations where it's like there's so much good, but then there's that closet with the skeletons in it, that whether it's our family or even my own, self, like there's certain parts of us we hide, or don't want people to know about.
Yeah.
And I think, man, that's true of our country too. It's like, it's so great, but there's those skeletons and things we don't want people to know about. And yet I think, just like in my personal life, being able to admit that and bring it out of the closet and work through it and address it, is like, I think part of having a healthy organization or personhood, and I think that's what this national conversation kind of did, is drag that those skeletons out of the closet. And some people are like, how dare you show the world our skeletons? And I think the same thing in a lot of people or families where it's like, how dare you talk about the fact that our family has alcoholics in it? Like, you had no right to, it's like, but for me, but for me personally, like, or that person personally, it was very important for them to have a healthy, honest dialogue about that in their recovery. Does that make sense? But there's always going to be some people who are offended by those skeletons being shown.
Yep.
And I understand that too. And yet, I would like to think that healthiness is on the other side of bringing those skeletons out and clearing them out, really.
No doubt.
And admitting, like, there's a third verse we should throw out of that thing and make it officially not a thing or whatever. Or, official. Yeah.
And I think, and I hear your point, and it's interesting. This could be a topic for another time, even when I hear, that part, there's a third verse that we should throw out of that thing. I'm willing to recognize, there's a third verse that doesn't, I may not necessarily align with, but, and I think this is where it comes into from my perspective, might become more of the woke dynamic.
Yeah.
Is, it's like, we want to change things just because, and granted, I'm not saying it's agreement.
Yeah, no.
But I'm saying we want to change things and just ignore that part of history.
Right.
But I think there is something to be said for understanding that makes sense based on that context. And I don't necessarily have to agree with it today, but I don't have to rewrite that song or rewrite history based on the fact that time existed.
Yeah.
And I think there is a value in that ability to say, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily agree with that.
Right.
And yet we're, I go ahead.
Or we're just, again, such a polarizing, humanity is just, we desire those polar opposites. So we want to say, well, if you sing the national anthem, you do agree with that third verse.
No, I hear you.
You can't help but condone it if you sing it. And it's like, well, that's not true at all, because
exactly
those first two verses I really agree with, and it means
the first 20 years of your life you had no idea they even existed.
Yeah. So it's but we there's that tendency to kind of make that a polarizing thing. And I like what you're saying about the woke thing and kind of revising history or erasing bad parts of history. I think that's unwise. I definitely don't think we should.
There's something to be learned from.
Yeah, and I think
not in a rationalizing, justifying standpoint, but in the ability
admission,
to say,
yes. Like, if you erase it from history, you don't get to learn from it. And I think, if anything, we should bring it to the surface in a way to learn from it. You know what I mean?
I do.
So, and I think, let's just, using this example, I can't remember actually ever hearing that should be removed from the song. I made that up.
No, I understand that.
I could see value in that, saying, as a country, we decided that this song we're going to remove that from the official version that we call our national anthem. And here's the reasons why.
Sure.
We don't believe in 3/5 of a person anymore. That's bunk. Like, we remove that. So we're also removing this concept. And that song still exists in its previous form. And that's an understanding of, like, that's the history we come from, and we're working to move away from that. It also just kind of ties into the statues being knocked down of Confederate soldiers and stuff. And, and yeah, that's that's probably a side,
Yeah.
different conversation.
Yep.
But it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. Well, Justin, I appreciate the topic this morning.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Good job, ChatGPT.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job, Justin.
We might have to start a series called the ChatGPT series.
Ooh, that'd be a separate.
I kind of like the random, because we've done that before where we brought a topic the other one didn't know about.
Yeah, the surprise. I like the surprise topics.
Surprise aspect is kind of fun.
And
so.
this has some surprise to
That's
it.
right.
Right. And I appreciate the and here again, I'm working on my levity. I'm working on
That's
just
right.
having to be the ability to
have some fun.
Yeah, pull it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks,
this is
Mark.
how we see it.
Hey, thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like How I See It, please do all the things that podcasts tell you to do. Subscribe, rate, review, follow us, and or talk nicely about us on social media. If you want to reach out, the email is us@howiseeit.click. Yep, I said .click, as in .click. Please tell your friends about this show, and we'll see you on the next one.